The crystal champagne flute shattered in my grip, sending shards of glass and bubbling liquid across the marble floor of our family's estate. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on my sister Nicole's beaming face as she stood in the centre of what was supposed to be my 30th birthday celebration. "I'm pregnant," she repeated, her hand resting on her still flat stomach, "and Leon's the father." My name is Saij, and this is how my perfect life crumbled in exactly 23 words. Leon, my fiancé of 2 years, stood frozen near the French doors, his face drained of colour. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw everything I needed to know in that single glance. "Saij, He started, taking a step toward me. I raised my hand, silencing him. The cut on my palm from the broken glass was starting to sting, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the hollow feeling spreading through my chest. "How long?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos in my head. Nicole's smile faltered slightly. "Does it matter?" "How long?" Christine, my best friend since college, appeared at my side with a napkin for my bleeding hand. "Maybe we should take this somewhere private," she whispered. "No," I said loudly, ensuring everyone could hear. "I think this is exactly the right place for this conversation. After all, what's a birthday party without some entertainment?" The gathered guests, friends, family, business associates, shifted uncomfortably. Some were already edging toward the exits, while others seemed rooted to the spot, unable to look away from the unfolding drama. 6 months, Leon finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The timeline hit me like a physical blow. 6 months ago, I had been in Europe, overseeing the expansion of our family's business. 6 months of late-night calls where Leon claimed to be too busy to talk long. 6 months of Nicole insisting she was taking care of things at home. "Saij, we never meant to hurt you." Nicole stepped closer, reaching for my arm. "It just happened." I jerked away from her touch. "Just happened. Like accidentally burning dinner, or forgetting to pay a bill. That kind of just happened." "You were always gone," Leon interjected, finding his voice. "The business took up all your time, and Nicole was here, and we—" "And you what?" I turned to face him, my voice razor-sharp. "You thought you'd fuck my sister while I was building our future." Several gasps echoed through the room. "Good. Let them all witness this." "I think everyone should leave," Christine announced, taking charge of the situation. She began ushering guests toward the door, while I remained rooted to my spot, staring at the 2 people I had trusted most in the world. "I'll move out tomorrow," Leon offered, as if he was doing me a favor. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, a strange, hollow sound that made both Leon and Nicole flinch. "No need," I said, reaching for a fresh glass of champagne from a nearby server's tray. "This is still my party, after all." I raised the glass high, drawing everyone's attention. "A toast," I announced, my voice carrying across the now half-empty room. "To new beginnings, to truth, to family." I locked eyes with Nicole. "To karma." I drained the glass in one go, set it down with deliberate care, and walked toward the grand staircase. As I reached the first step, I turned back to face them one last time. "Oh, and Nicole," I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Congratulations. I hope it was worth it." Later that night, after the last guest had gone and the house had fallen silent, I sat at my desk with my laptop open, accessing files I'd hoped I'd never need to use. My hand, now properly bandaged thanks to Christine, hovered over the keyboard. A soft knock at the door made me look up. Christine stood there, concern etched on her face. "Are you okay?" she asked. "No," I answered honestly. "But I will be." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "What are you going to do?" I turned back to my screen where financial records and legal documents waited for my attention. "I'm going to remind them both that karma isn't just a word you throw around at yoga class." "Saij." "Don't worry, Christine. I'm not going to do anything crazy." I closed the laptop and stood up. "I'm just going to do what I do best, take care of business." As Christine left, I caught my reflection in the window. Behind the hurt and anger, I saw something else in my eyes. determination. They thought they knew me, thought they could predict how I'd react. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Harvey's office always smelled like old leather and expensive coffee. I sat across from him, sliding a folder across his polished desk, while he reviewed the documents inside with raised eyebrows. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Saj?" He looked up at me over his reading glasses. "Once we set these wheels in motion." "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," I replied, crossing my legs. "Do you have the power of attorney papers ready?" He nodded, pulling out another set of documents. "Your father signed these over to you years ago. With these, you have complete control over the family's business interests." He paused, studying my face. "Does Nicole know about these?" My dear sister was always more interested in spending money than learning how it was made. I took the papers, scanning them quickly. She has no idea. My phone buzzed for the 20th time that morning. Leon's name flashed across the screen again. I declined the call without hesitation. "He's been trying to reach you?" Harvey asked, though it wasn't really a question. "They both have. Apparently the gravity of their situation is finally sinking in." I allowed myself a small smile. Amazing how quickly priorities change when you realize you've betrayed the person who controls your trust fund. Harvey leaned back in his chair, concern evident in his expression. "You know, revenge isn't always the answer, Sage. This isn't just about revenge, Harvey. This is about consequences." I stood up and walked to his window, looking out over the city. They made their choices. Now they get to live with them. A knock at the door interrupted us. Harvey's assistant poked her head in. "Mr. Schmidt, Ms. Nicole is here. She's quite insistent about speaking with you." I turned around, meeting Harvey's questioning look. "Perfect timing. Let her in." Nicole burst through the door seconds later, her designer handbag swinging wildly. "Sage, I've been trying to reach you for days." She stopped short when she saw the papers spread across Harvey's desk. "What's going on?" "Sister dear," I said, my voice honey-sweet. "I was just finishing up some business. You remember business, right? That thing that pays for your shopping sprees and yoga retreats?" "Cut the crap, Saj." Nicole's face flushed. "Leon told me you've frozen all the accounts. Even my personal one. You can't do that." "Actually, I can. And I did." I picked up one of the documents and held it out to her. "Maybe if you'd paid attention during all those family meetings instead of texting under the table, you'd know about this little thing called power of attorney." Nicole snatched the paper, her eyes widening as she read. This isn't fair. Daddy would never..." "Daddy did. Years ago." I took the paper back from her trembling hands. He knew exactly what he was doing when he put me in charge. "I'm pregnant, Sage. You can't just cut me off." Tears welled up in her eyes. "What about the baby?" "Ah, yes, my future niece or nephew." I sat back down, crossing my legs. "Don't worry, I'm not completely heartless. You'll receive a modest monthly allowance, enough to cover basic necessities. No more designer shopping sprees, though. I hear Target has lovely maternity wear." Nicole's face crumpled. "Why are you being so cruel?" "Cruel?" I stood up slowly, my calm facade cracking slightly. "You want to talk about cruel? How about sleeping with your sister's fiancé? How about announcing your pregnancy at my birthday party? That kind of cruel?" "I love him," she whispered. "And I loved you both." I gathered my papers, sliding them into my briefcase. "Harvey, please make sure everything is filed today. I'll be leaving town tomorrow." "Leaving?" Nicole grabbed my arm. "You can't leave. Where are you going?" I gently removed her hand. "That's the beauty of it, Nicole. I don't have to tell you anything anymore." As I walked to the door, I paused and turned back. "Oh, and you might want to let Leon know that his position at the company has been terminated. His severance package should cover a few months' rent on a modest apartment. I hear the east side of town is quite affordable." I left Nicole standing there, her mouth open in shock. In the elevator, I finally allowed myself to shake just for a moment. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Christine. "Everything okay?" she asked when I answered. "It's done," I replied, stepping out into the lobby. "Did you get the apartment set up?" "All ready for you. Are you sure about this?" I pushed through the revolving doors into the bright sunshine. Absolutely. It's time for a fresh start. Back home, I placed my letter on the dining room table where they couldn't miss it. As I packed the last of my essential belongings, I could hear Leon's car pulling into the driveway. Perfect timing. He could read it with Nicole. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about causing pain. It's about walking away and taking everything they took for granted with you. Christine's guest room had become my sanctuary over the past week. The sound of her coffee maker gurgling to life each morning was a welcome change from the deafening silence of my old house. I sat at her kitchen island, scrolling through the dozens of missed calls and messages on my phone. "They're still trying to reach you." Christine placed a steaming mug in front of me. 17 calls from Leon yesterday alone. I showed her the screen. And Nicole's been emailing Harvey non-stop. "Have you read any of them?" "Don't need to." I took a sip of coffee. Harvey forwards me the important bits. Apparently Leon tried to access his corporate credit cards yesterday. That must have been a fun surprise at the gas station. Christine's phone chimed. She glanced at it and grimaced. "Nicole's asking me where you are. Again." "Tell her I moved to Tibet to become a monk," I suggested, managing a small smile. "Saj." Christine set her phone down. "You know you'll have to face them eventually." Before I could respond, my laptop pinged with a new email notification. The sender's name made my heart skip a beat. Marcus Stewart, CEO of our biggest competitor. "What is it?" Christine asked, noticing my expression. I turned the screen toward her. "Remember how Leon was handling our merger negotiations?" "Yeah." "Turns out he'd been feeding information to Stewart Industries for months." I opened the email, scanning its contents. "Marcus is offering to tell me everything in exchange for a meeting." "That son of a—" Christine stopped herself. "What are you going to do?" I closed the laptop with a decisive click. "I'm going to meet him." The restaurant Marcus chose was exactly what you'd expect from a CEO. Expensive, discreet, and with private booths perfect for sensitive conversations. He stood as I approached, offering his hand. "Seiji, thank you for coming." I sat down without taking his hand. "Let's skip the pleasantries, Marcus. What did Leon tell you?" He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Everything. Profit margins, expansion plans, client lists. He was quite thorough. I flipped through the documents, each page making my blood boil more. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I have a daughter." Marcus leaned back, studying me. "And if someone did to her what your sister and Leon did to you, well, let's just say I understand why you're doing what you're doing." "This isn't about revenge," I started. "Of course it is," he interrupted. "But it's also about business. And that's why I'm here." He pulled out another document. "I want to make you an offer." Later that evening, I returned to Christine's place to find her pacing the living room. "Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for hours." "Meeting ran long," I said, dropping my bag. "What's wrong?" "Nicole showed up here looking for you. She was hysterical, Saja. Leon lost their apartment. Something about the lease being in your name." "Imagine that." I kicked off my heels. "She's pregnant, Saja. Where are they supposed to go?" "They're adults, Christine. They'll figure it out." I pulled out Marcus's offer letter. "Besides, I have bigger things to worry about." Christine read the letter, her eyes widening. "Holy shit. Are you going to accept?" "I haven't decided yet." I walked to the window, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. It would be the smart business move. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. "Remember that summer in Cape Cod," the message read. "When you made me promise to always protect you. I kept that promise until Leon. I'm so sorry, sis." I deleted the message, but the words had already burned themselves into my memory. That summer, the last one before our parents' divorce, before everything changed, felt like a lifetime ago. "Say?" Christine's voice pulled me back. "You okay?" "I need to make some calls," I said, heading for my room. "And Christine, if Nicole shows up again, tell her I moved to Mars." Alone in my room, I pulled out my laptop and opened a new email. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I considered my next move. The merger deal with Stewart Industries would devastate Leon's career prospects. No company would touch him after this scandal broke. And Nicole? Well, she'd learned that trust funds don't last forever. As I typed my response to Marcus, another text came through. Please, Sage. We need to talk. L. I blocked the number and hit send on the email. Some conversations weren't worth having anymore. Some betrayals cut too deep for words to fix. Besides, I had a merger to plan. The boardroom felt colder than I remembered. Harvey sat beside me as we watched the quarterly reports scroll across the projector screen. The numbers weren't good. As you can see, Harvey pointed to a particularly alarming graph. Without Leon's client relationships, we've lost significant ground in the Asian market. Those were my father's clients first, I reminded him, before he handed them over to Leon. Yes, but... Harvey was interrupted by my phone buzzing. Another text from Nicole. The baby's kicking. Please call me. I switched the phone off and turned back to Harvey. What are our options? We need someone managing those accounts personally, someone the clients trust. He gave me a meaningful look. Someone like you. Before I could respond, my assistant Julia burst into the room. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Leon is in the lobby. He's refusing to leave until he speaks with you. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Well then, let's not keep him waiting. The elevator ride down felt eternal. When the doors opened, I saw him immediately, wearing the same suit he'd worn to countless client meetings, but looking somehow diminished. You can't ignore me forever, Sage, he said as I approached. I'm not ignoring you, Leon. I'm moving on. There's a difference. I gestured to the seating area. But since you're here, let's talk. We sat across from each other, the ghost of our past hanging between us. The merger with Stewart Industries, he started. You can't do this. Actually, I can. And I am. I crossed my legs, watching him squirm. Marcus was very interested in the information you shared with him, though I suspect you didn't mean for him to share it with me. Leon's face paled. I can explain. Save it. I held up my hand. You didn't come here about the merger. Why are you really here? He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Nicole's not doing well, Sage. The stress. The doctor says it's not good for the baby. We're staying in a motel off Highway 9. And we need help. Please. His eyes met mine, pleading. Whatever you think of me, this is your niece or nephew we're talking about. I stood up, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows. You know what I remember, Leon? I remember planning our wedding, picking out china patterns while you were fucking my sister, discussing baby names while you were starting your own family behind my back. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I turned to face him. Explain it to me. Help me understand how you could do this to someone you claim to love. I did love you. He stood up, running his hands through his hair. But you were always working, always focused on the business. Nicole was there. She understood. Understood what? That my hard work paid for her lifestyle? For your fancy suits? I laughed bitterly. Get out, Leon. And tell Nicole to stop texting me about the baby. I'm not interested in playing happy families. As security escorted him out, Christine appeared by my side. That looked intense. Nothing I couldn't handle. I checked my watch. Ready for lunch? At our usual cafe, Christine pushed her salad around her plate. Nicole called me this morning. Of course she did. She's scared, Sage. They're running out of money and the motel is exactly what they deserve. I set down my fork. Why does everyone expect me to feel sorry for them? Because you're better than this, Christine said quietly. Because the Sage I know wouldn't let her sister live in a motel, pregnant or not. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email from Marcus. The merger details were finalized. One signature, and Leon's career would be effectively over. The Sage you knew died at that birthday party, I said, picking up my phone. Besides, I have a company to run. Back at the office, Harvey was waiting with more bad news. 3 more clients have pulled their accounts. They're asking for Leon specifically. I sank into my chair, the weight of everything finally hitting me. He built relationships with them for years. Of course they want him. There might be a way to salvage this, Harvey suggested carefully. If we brought Leon back, just for the Asian market. No, I stood up abruptly. I'll handle it myself. Book me on the next flight to Singapore. As I packed up my desk, a photo fell from one of the folders, Nicole and me at her college graduation, both smiling, both happy, before everything fell apart. My phone buzzed one last time. Doctor says it's a girl. Thought you should know. N. I slipped the photo back into the folder and grabbed my coat. Some bridges, once burned, leave nothing but ashes, and I was done trying to rebuild from ruins. Singapore's heat hit me like a wall as I stepped out of the taxi. 3 days of back-to-back meetings had left me exhausted, but I'd managed to salvage most of our Asian partnerships. My phone rang as I entered the hotel lobby. Christine. You need to come home, she said without preamble. Now. I have 2 more meetings tomorrow. Nicole's in the hospital. The world tilted slightly. What happened? Complications with the pregnancy. She's stable, but... Christine paused. She's asking for you. I sat down heavily in one of the lobby's plush chairs. I can't just drop everything and... Damn it, Sage! Christine's voice cracked. This isn't about your revenge anymore. This is about your sister and your niece. How far are you willing to take this? Before I could respond, another call beeped through. Harvey. I have to go, I told Christine. I'll think about it. Harvey's news wasn't any better. Marcus Stewart is backing out of the merger. What? Why? He says the negative publicity isn't worth it. Apparently someone leaked the story about Leon's involvement to the press. It's being spun as corporate espionage. I pressed my fingers to my temples. How bad is it? Bad enough that our stock dropped 12 points this morning. He sighed. Seg, we need to consider damage control. 4 hours later, I was on a plane back home, my head spinning with possibilities. The merger was supposed to be my masterstroke, the final nail in Leon's professional coffin. Instead, it had backfired spectacularly. I found Christine waiting at the airport. Before you ask, Nicole's condition has stabilized, she said as we walked to her car. But there's something else you need to know. She handed me her phone. On the screen was a social media post from Nicole. To everyone asking about the scandal. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I hurt my sister. But destroying our family's legacy isn't the answer. Sage, if you're reading this, please remember who we used to be. Remember Cape Cod. She posted that from her hospital bed, Christine said quietly. It's gone viral. I handed the phone back, my hands shaking slightly. Take me to the hospital. The maternity ward was quiet when we arrived. Leon was slumped in a chair outside Nicole's room, his suit wrinkled, his eyes red. He straightened when he saw me. Saija, don't. I held up my hand. Is she awake? He nodded, stepping aside. Nicole looked small in the hospital bed, monitors beeping steadily around her. She opened her eyes as I approached. You came, she whispered. Christine can be very persuasive. I sat in the chair beside her bed. How are you feeling? Like karma finally caught up with me. She tried to smile, but it came out more like a grimace. The baby. They say she's under stress. I looked at the monitors, at the steady heartbeat of my unborn niece. Why did you post that message? Because someone had to stop this war. Nicole reached for my hand. I let her take it. We're destroying everything Dad built, Saij. Is that what you want? What I wanted was a sister I could trust, a fiancé who loved me. I pulled my hand away. What I wanted doesn't matter anymore. It matters to me. She struggled to sit up. Remember what Mum used to say? Family is family even when they're wrong. Mum left us, I reminded her. But we stayed together. Nicole's eyes filled with tears. Until now. A nurse entered, checking the monitors. Blood pressure's still high, she murmured. You need to rest. I stood up. I should go. Sage, wait! Nicole grabbed my wrist. The company. Dad's legacy. It needs both of us, you know that. Outside the room, Christine was waiting. Well? Call Harvey. I said, pulling out my phone. Tell him to draft a new proposal. Shared leadership of the Asian division, contingent on certain conditions. You're going to work with Leon? No. I looked back at Nicole's room. I'm going to work with my sister. Leon's on his own. As we walked out of the hospital, my phone buzzed with a text from Harvey. Making things right doesn't make you weak. It makes you worthy of the trust your father placed in you. I looked up at the night sky, remembering Cape Cod, remembering promises made and broken. Maybe it was time to make new ones. Christine, I said, let's go get a drink. I need to tell you about my new business plan. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's finding the strength to rebuild what's broken, not for others, but for yourself. The conference room buzzed with tension as I laid out the new contracts. Nicole sat across from me, her baby bump now visible beneath her maternity dress. Harvey stood at the head of the table mediating what had become our most important family meeting. The terms are simple, I said, sliding the papers toward Nicole. You get control of the domestic operations. I maintain the Asian market and international expansion. We make decisions about the company's future together. Nicole skimmed the documents. And Leon is not part of this discussion. I kept my voice firm. This is between us. He's the father of my child, Saj. And that's the only reason he's not facing corporate espionage charges. I leaned back in my chair. Take it or leave it, Nicole. Harvey cleared his throat. Perhaps we should take a break. No, Nicole interrupted, reaching for a pen. I'll sign. As she scrawled her signature across the pages, my phone lit up with a message from Christine. Leon's in the lobby. Says he needs to talk to you both. Important. Speaking of the devil, I muttered, showing Nicole the message. She put down the pen. We should hear him out. Fine. I stood up. Harvey, could you... Minutes later, Leon walked in, clutching a manila envelope. He looked worse than at the hospital. Unshaven, his clothes slightly rumpled. Make it quick, I said. He pulled out several papers from the envelope. I've been offered a position in Dubai. Nicole's hand flew to her stomach. Dubai? But the baby. I'm not asking you to come with me. He placed the papers on the table. I'm here to sign away my rights. The room fell silent. Even Harvey, who'd seen his share of family drama, looked shocked. What are you talking about? Nicole's voice shook. I'm poison here. Leon ran a hand through his hair. Everything I touch falls apart. The company, our relationship. I need to start fresh. And you both need me gone to heal. I picked up the papers. Legal documents relinquishing any claim to company assets and, more surprisingly, parental rights. You can't be serious, Nicole whispered. I am. He turned to me. You were right, Sage. About everything. I betrayed you, the company, our future, and Nicole. He looked at her, his eyes wet. I ruined your relationship with your sister. I can't fix that while I'm here. So you're running away? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. That's your solution? I'm giving you both what you need. A clean break. He pulled out a pen. Unless you object. Nicole stood up suddenly, knocking her chair backward. I need some air. As she rushed out, Harvey followed, leaving Leon and me alone. Dubai? I said flatly. That's far. Not far enough, probably. He started signing the papers. For what it's worth, I really did love you, Sage. I just loved myself more. Save the confessions for someone who cares. I gathered the signed documents. You should go. Nicole needs time to process this. He nodded, standing. At the door, he paused. Take care of them? Both of them? Get out, Leon. After he left, I found Nicole in the building's rooftop garden, Christine sitting quietly beside her. He's really leaving, Nicole said as I approached. Looks that way. I sat down on her other side. Are you okay? No, she wiped her eyes. But maybe that's fair. We hurt you so badly. Maybe this is our karma. Christine squeezed her hand and stood up. I'll give you two a minute. Once she was gone, Nicole turned to me. I don't want to do this alone. You won't be. The words surprised me as much as her. You signed the contracts, remember? We're stuck with each other now. She managed a weak laugh. Just like Cape Cod. No, I shook my head. This is different. This is us choosing to be sisters again, not just being born that way. My phone buzzed. Harvey reminding us about the press conference announcing the company's new structure. Ready to face the wolves? I asked, standing and offering her my hand. Nicole took it, letting me help her up. Together? Together. I straightened her dress. But if you ever betray me again, you'll destroy me completely? She attempted a smile. Worse, I'll make you handle all the quarterly reports. As we headed back inside, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe understanding. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive isn't the one who hurt you, but yourself for letting them. 3 months passed in a blur of meetings, contracts, and tentative reconciliation. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office when Harvey burst in, his usual composure shattered. Turn on the news, he said, grabbing the remote. The business channel filled my wall screen and my stomach dropped. There was Leon standing at a podium in Dubai, revealing company secrets to the international press. Systematic manipulation of market data, his voice filled my office. The company's Asian expansion was built on fraudulent numbers. My phone exploded with notifications. Nicole burst into the office, her pregnancy now in its final weeks. Have you seen? I'm looking at it right now. I turned up the volume. Their father knew, Leon continued. He covered it up for years. I have proof. Nicole collapsed into a chair. He's lying. Dad would never… Ms. Sage, Julia rushed in. Marcus Stewart is on line 1, and the SEC just called. I held up my hand for silence, watching Leon pull out documents on screen, documents I'd never seen before with our father's signature clear as day. Harvey, I turned to him. Is this possible? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Your father. He had his ways of doing things. You knew, Nicole's voice cracked, all this time? I suspected. Harvey sat heavily, but I never had proof. My phone rang again. Christine. Turn on the news, she said when I answered. Already watching. Can you come over? On my way. I turned back to the screen just as Leon dropped his final bomb. And I have evidence that current management knew about these irregularities and chose to continue the deception. That's a lie. Nicole struggled to her feet. We never… She stopped suddenly, grabbing her stomach. Nicole! I rushed to her side. The baby, she gasped. Something's wrong. The next few hours were chaos. While Christine took Nicole to the hospital, Harvey and I dealt with the fallout. The SEC wanted meetings. Shareholders were panicking. Our stock was in freefall. We need to make a statement, Harvey said, pacing my office. Get ahead of this. With what? I gestured at the stack of documents he'd just shown me. Our father built this company on lies. Everything we thought we were protecting. My phone buzzed. Christine. Baby coming. Get here now. Go, Harvey said. I'll handle things here. At the hospital, I found Christine in the waiting room. How is she? In labour. She's asking for you. I followed a nurse to the delivery room. Nicole lay there, pale and scared. Seiji, she reached for my hand. I'm sorry. About everything. About Dad. Stop, I took her hand. That doesn't matter right now. But the company will still be there tomorrow. I squeezed her hand. Right now you have more important things to focus on. Hours later, as dawn broke over the city, my niece entered the world. 6 pounds, 4 ounces of new beginnings. She's perfect, Nicole whispered, cradling her daughter. I watched them from the corner of the room, my phone silently cataloguing the destruction of everything our father built. Harvey had sent preliminary numbers. We'd lost millions in market value. The SEC was launching a formal investigation. Do you want to hold her? Nicole asked. I hesitated, then stepped forward. As I took my niece in my arms, she opened her eyes, bright, innocent, untouched by the sins of her grandfather or the mistakes of her parents. What are you going to name her? I asked. I was thinking, Grace. Nicole watched us carefully. Because that's what we all need right now. My phone buzzed again. Harvey. Press conference in 2 hours. What's our play? Looking down at Grace, I made my decision. We tell the truth, I texted back. All of it. That could destroy everything, he replied. No, I wrote. Lies destroyed everything. The truth might save us. I handed Grace back to Nicole. I have to go handle something, but I'll be back. Sage? Nicole called as I reached the door. Whatever happens with the company, we're still sisters, right? I thought about our father, about his lies and the empire he built on them, about Leon's betrayal and his final act of revenge, about karma and consequences and the tiny baby who deserved better than all of this. Always, I said, but this time we do things differently. No more secrets. No more lies. As I left the hospital, the sun was fully up, painting the sky in shades of new beginnings. Sometimes I realized revenge doesn't look like what you expect. Sometimes it looks like truth, like grace, like the courage to tear everything down and build it back up right. The boardroom was packed with reporters as I approached the podium. Nicole sat in the front row, Grace sleeping peacefully in her arms. Harvey stood to my side, his face grim but supportive. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady. Today I want to talk about legacy, not just my father's, but the one we choose to create. Camera shutters clicked rapidly as I pulled out the documents Leon had revealed, along with others he hadn't known about. These papers show systematic fraud spanning 2 decades. My father built this company on deception, and for that, we are deeply sorry. I paused, meeting the eyes of various reporters. But that ends today. I outlined our plan. A complete restructuring, transparent audits, compensation for affected parties. With each detail, I watched the reporters' expressions shift from skepticism to cautious hope. Ms. Sage, a reporter stood up. Sources say you knew about these irregularities. How do you respond? I didn't know, I said firmly. But I should have. My desire for revenge against my sister and against Leon, blinded me to what was happening in my own company. Nicole shifted in her seat, tears streaming down her face. And now? Another reporter called out. What happens to the company? We rebuild, I gestured to Nicole. My sister and I are announcing a complete overhaul of our operations. Every contract, every deal will be reviewed. We're bringing in independent auditors and establishing new oversight measures. And what about Leon? Someone shouted. Will you press charges? No. I saw Nicole's head snap up in surprise. His actions, while devastating, forced us to confront uncomfortable truths. Sometimes, it takes losing everything to see what really matters. After the press conference, Christine found me in my office, packing up my father's old photographs. That was quite a show, she said, picking up a frame. You okay? Getting there. I sat on the edge of my desk. The SEC is being surprisingly cooperative, given our voluntary disclosure. And Nicole, taking Grace home today? I smiled slightly. She asked me to come over for dinner. Will you go? The door opened before I could answer. Nicole walked in, carrying Grace. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but someone wanted to see her aunt before heading home. Christine squeezed my shoulder and slipped out, leaving us alone. That was brave, Nicole said, sitting down. What you did in there. It was necessary. I reached out to touch Grace's tiny hand. She deserves better than what Dad left us. We all do. Nicole shifted Grace to her other arm. I got a message from Leon. My hand froze. What did he want? To apologize, actually. He said watching you handle everything with such grace made him realize what he lost. She looked up at me. He's not coming back. Good. I stood up, walking to the window. The city stretched out below, unchanged despite our world turning upside down. You know this won't be easy, right? Rebuilding everything? Nothing worth doing ever is. Nicole joined me at the window. Remember what Mom used to say about storms? It's not about waiting for them to pass, I quoted. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Well, Nicole adjusted Grace's blanket, I'd say we're in for quite a dance. My phone buzzed. Harvey with updates about our major clients. Most were staying, impressed by our transparency. A few had jumped ship, but surprisingly, Marcus Stewart wasn't one of them. He says he respects how we handled things, Harvey's message read. Wants to discuss a legitimate merger when the dust settles. I showed Nicole the message. What do you think? Ready to build something real this time? Together? She smiled, reminding me of summers in Cape Cod, of promises made and broken and made again. Together. I touched Grace's cheek gently. For her. As the sun set over the city, casting long shadows through the office windows, I realized something profound. Revenge hadn't given me what I wanted. Peace had come from facing the truth, from choosing to break cycles instead of perpetuating them. Take her, Nicole said suddenly, holding out Grace. I need to use the bathroom. This time I didn't hesitate. As I held my niece, she opened her eyes and grabbed my finger with surprising strength. Hey there, little one, I whispered. Welcome to the family business. Don't worry, we're doing things differently now. Grace gurgled in response, and for the first time in months, I felt truly, completely at peace. Sometimes karma isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. And sometimes, the best revenge is choosing not to seek it at all.
I'm Robin, 32 years old, and I've been in the event planning game for 9 years now. Weddings, birthdays, anniversaries, engagements, you name it, I've organized it. Funny how life turns out. I studied economics in college, but got hooked on planning events during my time there. Turns out, I had a knack for it. So much so that I decided to make it my career. Over the years, I've built up quite a reputation. My calendar's always packed with clients, which is great for business, but not so much for my personal life. Not that I'm complaining, I love what I do. So there I was, sitting in my office, hashing out details for the Johnson family's company anniversary. 30 years in business, that's something to celebrate, right? I was deep in conversation with Mr. Johnson about centerpieces when my phone buzzed. It was my sister, Kate. Robin, you need to come to Mom and Dad's. Now, she said, her voice all urgent. It's important. I sighed, looking at the mountain of work on my desk. Fine, I'll be there in an hour. As I drove to my parents' house, I couldn't help but feel a knot in my stomach. Family gatherings were never my favorite thing. Don't get me wrong, I love my family, but there's always been this tension. See, Kate's 8 years younger than me, and she's always been the golden child. Mom and Dad doted on her, while I was left to fend for myself. When I went to college, they couldn't find the money to help me out. My grandmother stepped in, bless her soul. But a few years later, they had no problem footing the bill for Kate's education and a fancy apartment. I tried not to let it get to me, but it stung. Over the years, I'd learned to keep my distance. It was easier that way. I pulled up to the house and took a deep breath before knocking. Mom answered the door with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Robin, honey, come in. Everyone's in the living room. I walked in to find Dad and Kate sitting on the couch. Kate jumped up, practically bouncing with excitement. I raised an eyebrow. What's the big emergency? Kate clapped her hands together. Well, I have a surprise. But first, promise me you'll help, okay? I looked at Mom and Dad, who were both smiling encouragingly. Against my better judgment, I nodded. Okay, I promise. Now what's going on? Just as I was about to press Kate for more details, the front door opened. In walked a guy who looked a bit younger than me, all smiles and charm. Kate bounced over to him, linking her arm through his. Robin, this is Mark, my fiancé. I blinked, caught off guard. Oh, nice to meet you, Mark. We shook hands, and I turned back to Kate. So, this is the big news? You're engaged? Kate nodded enthusiastically. Yes, and that's why I called you here. I want you to plan our engagement party. I felt my stomach drop. Kate, I appreciate the thought, but I'm swamped with clients right now. I don't think. Dad cut me off. Now, Robin, this is your sister we're talking about. Surely you can make time for family instead of strangers. I bit my tongue, fighting back the urge to remind him how little time they'd made for me over the years. Mom chimed in, her voice sickeningly sweet. Honey, it's your duty as a sister. Kate deserves the best, doesn't she? I looked at Kate, who was practically vibrating with excitement. It has to be perfect, Robin. I mean, I deserve the best, right? I felt trapped. Every instinct told me to say no, to stand my ground. But years of family dynamics kicked in, and I heard myself agreeing. Great, Kate clapped her hands. And of course, you'll do it for free. That's not a problem, is it? I froze. Free? Kate, even for family, there are costs involved. Oh, don't be silly, Kate laughed. You're doing this as my sister. We'll cover the actual expenses, of course, but your services are a gift, right? I looked at Mom and Dad, hoping for some support, but they just nodded along with Kate. I felt like I was drowning. Fine, I said, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. I'll plan the party for free, but you and Mark will need to cover all other expenses. Deal? Kate squealed and hugged me tight. Deal. Oh, Robin, you're the best. As I drove home, my mind was racing. I'd just committed to planning a free event for my sister, potentially losing paying clients in the process. The Johnsons' anniversary was the first casualty. I called them as soon as I got home. Mr. Johnson? It's Robin. I'm so sorry, but something's come up with my family, and I won't be able to plan your anniversary party after all. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Oh, I see. Well, these things happen, I suppose. I could hear the disappointment in his voice, and it made me feel even worse. I have a colleague who's excellent at event planning. I'd be happy to pass along her contact information if you'd like. Mr. Johnson agreed, and I sent over my friend Sarah's details. As I hung up, I couldn't help but feel like I was watching my hard-earned reputation slip away. All because I couldn't say no to my family. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of planning and phone calls. I threw myself into organizing Kate's engagement party with the same dedication I gave to all my events. Maybe even more, if I'm being honest. There was a part of me that wanted to prove something, to my family, to Kate, to myself. I was determined to make this the most spectacular engagement party ever. I started by booking the Riverside, an upscale restaurant with a stunning view of the city skyline. It wasn't easy to get a reservation on such short notice, but I pulled some strings. The owner, Samantha, was an old client of mine. Next came the menu. I spent hours on the phone with the chef, discussing options. We need something impressive, but not stuffy, I explained. Think elegant comfort food. The DJ was a no-brainer. I called up Mike, my go-to guy for all my events. Hey, Mike. Got a special one for you. My sister's engagement party. With the big items taken care of, I called Kate to give her an update and discuss payment. Oh, it all sounds wonderful, she gushed. You really are the best at this, Robin. Thanks, I said, trying to keep the pride out of my voice. So, about the deposits. Oh, right, Kate interrupted. Can we do that later? Mark and I are a bit tied up with some other expenses right now. But I promise we'll pay for everything before the party. Cross my heart. I hesitated. It wasn't how I usually did business, but this was my sister. All right, Kate, I trust you. After hanging up, I made some more calls. To the florist, the decorators, the rental company for the extra chairs and tables. Each time, I found myself saying the same thing. The payment will be a little delayed, but I guarantee it'll come through before the event. You know I'm good for it. And each time, they agreed. After all, we had history. They trusted me. I just hoped I wasn't making a huge mistake. As the days passed, more client calls came in. Good offers, too. The sort that would have paid my rent for months. But each time, I had to turn them down. As the engagement party date loomed closer, I finally sat down to tally up all the expenses. My desk was cluttered with receipts and invoices, flowers, catering, decorations, venue rental, and more. I meticulously entered each item into a spreadsheet, watching the total climb higher and higher. When I finished, I stared at the screen in disbelief. The final amount was just over $13,000. It was more than I'd anticipated, but that's what happens when you're told to spare no expense for the perfect engagement party. I took a deep breath and composed an email to Kate, attaching the detailed invoice. "Hey sis," I wrote, trying to keep it light, "here's the breakdown of expenses for your engagement party. Let me know if you have any questions." That evening, my phone rang. It was Kate. "Hey, what's up?" I answered, expecting her to have questions about the invoice. "Robin, why are you sending me bills?" Kate's voice was sickeningly sweet, with an undercurrent of annoyance. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "It's the invoice for the engagement party expenses, just like we agreed." There was a pause, then Kate let out a laugh that sent chills down my spine. "Oh, Robin, you can't seriously expect Mark and me to pay for all this, can you?" My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "Kate, you promised you'd cover all the expenses. I've got vendors waiting to be paid." "Oh, don't be so dramatic," Kate scoffed. "You make plenty of money with your little party planning business. Surely you can afford to treat your only sister to a nice engagement party?" I was speechless. This couldn't be happening. "Kate, listen to me, I have people waiting to be paid. People who trusted me. You promised." "Well, I'm sorry if there was a misunderstanding," Kate said, not sounding sorry at all. "But Mark and I simply can't afford this right now. You'll have to figure something out." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief, then immediately tried to call her back. It went straight to voicemail. Panic rising in my chest, I dialed my parents' number. Mom picked up on the third ring. "Robin? Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, we have a problem. Kate is refusing to pay for her engagement party expenses. Can you please talk to her?" There was a long pause. "Oh, honey," Mom finally said, her voice full of disappointment. "Why are you trying to charge your sister for her own engagement party? That's not very nice of you." I felt like I was losing my mind. "Mom, that was the agreement. I'm doing all the work for free, but Kate and Mark were supposed to cover the actual costs. I have vendors waiting to be paid." "Now, Robin," Dad's voice came on the line. I was on speaker. "You know your sister doesn't have that kind of money. But you're doing well with your business. Surely you can handle this as a gift to Kate." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Dad, it's $13,000. I can't just..." "13,000? Mom gasped. "Robin, how could you spend so much? That's ridiculous. You told me to make it perfect," I shouted, my composure finally breaking. "You said Kate deserved the best." "Don't raise your voice at us, young lady," Dad said sternly. "The fact is, you agreed to do this for your sister. If you've overspent, that's on you. You'll just have to figure it out." The conversation devolved from there. No matter what I said, my parents refused to see reason. In their eyes, I was the villain, the successful older sister, trying to ruin her little sister's special day over money. By the time I hung up, I was shaking with anger and disbelief. I looked at my computer screen, the invoice still open. $13,000. Money I'd promised to people who trusted me. Just then, a notification popped up on my phone. It was from Kate's social media account. With trembling fingers, I tapped the link, and what I saw made my blood boil. There was my sister, beaming at the camera, her post gushing about the upcoming engagement party. "Can't wait for tomorrow," she wrote. "We've spent so much to make it perfect. It's going to be amazing." Something inside me snapped. The anger, frustration, and hurt I'd been bottling up for years came rushing to the surface. Before I knew what I was doing, I had my phone in hand, dialing the restaurant. "Samantha, it's Robin," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I'm sorry, but I need to cancel tomorrow's event. I'll transfer the full payment and cancellation fee to you right away." I made similar calls to all the vendors, the caterer, the florist, the decorators. Each time, I apologized profusely and promised immediate payment. By the time I was done, my savings account was nearly drained, but my professional relationships were intact. The last call I made was to Mike, my DJ friend. "Hey, Mike. I'm so sorry, but tomorrow's event is canceled." "Whoa, what happened? Isn't it your sister's engagement?" I sighed. "It's a long story, I'll fill you in later. For now, consider yourself free tomorrow. I'll still pay your fee, of course." The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, a cup of coffee growing cold in front of me. My phone was propped up against the sugar bowl, live streaming Kate's arrival at the restaurant. I watched as she stepped out of a car, Mark by her side, both of them dressed to the nines. Mom and Dad were right behind them, along with Mark's parents and a group of excited-looking guests. Kate was talking animatedly to the camera, gesturing at the restaurant. "Here we are," she chirped. "I can't wait to show you all the amazing decorations. My wonderful sister Robin planned everything." I felt a twinge of guilt, quickly replaced by grim satisfaction as Kate reached for the door. Her smile faltered as it didn't budge. She tried again, then peered through the window. "That's weird," she said, her voice losing its perkiness. "It looks empty?" Then I saw her notice the sign on the door. Even through the small phone screen, I could see the color drain from her face. "Cancelled?" she shrieked, whirling to face my parents. "What does it mean, cancelled?" The livestream devolved into chaos. Kate was near hysterics, Mom was trying to calm her down, and Dad was on his phone, presumably trying to reach me. I sat at my kitchen table, a strange calm settling over me as I watched the chaos unfold on my phone screen. The satisfaction I felt was bittersweet. I'd finally stood up for myself, but at what cost? My phone buzzed. Kate's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed, her voice shrill with rage. I kept my voice level. "I cancelled the event that I paid for with my own money. You know, the one you refused to cover despite our agreement?" "How dare you?" Kate sputtered. "You've ruined everything. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" "About as embarrassing as being told to foot a $13,000 bill for my sister's party, I imagine," I replied coolly. Kate launched into a tirade of insults and accusations. I let her rant, feeling oddly detached from it all. When she paused for breath, I spoke. "Kate, you didn't respect my work or our agreement. You tried to deceive me. So I made a business decision to cancel an event I couldn't afford to fund myself. It's that simple." "You unbelievable creep," Kate shrieked. "You'll regret this, I swear." I hung up, my hands were shaking, but not from fear. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. 15 minutes later, my phone rang again. Mom and Dad. "Robin Elizabeth," Dad's voice boomed as soon as I answered. "You've humiliated your sister and this entire family. How could you be so selfish?" I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Selfish? That's rich coming from you too." "Watch your tone," Mom chimed in. "We raised you better than this. Your sister is devastated." "And I'm out $13,000, I shot back. "Did you even consider that?" "Oh, please," Dad scoffed. "You're doing well with your business. You could have helped your sister out. That's what family does." I took a deep breath. I was helping. I planned the entire event for free. But I can't just throw away thousands of dollars. "You're just jealous," Mom interrupted. "You're jealous of your sister's happiness because you're all alone. So you decided to ruin her special day out of spite." The accusation hit me like a slap. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them away. You know what? I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with all of it. I hung up before they could respond. My hands were shaking as I set down the phone, but I felt a strange sense of liberation. Taking a deep breath, I opened my laptop and composed an email to Kate. Kate, I expect full reimbursement for all expenses incurred for your engagement party. This includes catering, venue rental, decorations, and all other associated costs. The total amount is $13,247.89. I've attached a detailed invoice for your reference. If I don't receive payment within 30 days, I will be forced to pursue legal action to recover these funds. Robin. I hit send before I could second guess myself. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with messages. From Kate. You money-grubbing witch. How dare you threaten me? You'll never see a cent from me. From Mark. Back off, Robin. You're making a big mistake. You have no idea who you're messing with. I stared at the messages, a mix of anger and disbelief washing over me. How had it come to this? How had my own family turned into such strangers? Just as I was considering my next move, my phone rang. It was Aunt Sarah, Mom's sister. I hesitated before answering, bracing myself for more accusations. Robin, what on earth happened today? Aunt Sarah's voice was concerned, not angry. I took a deep breath and told her everything, the agreement with Kate, the last-minute refusal to pay, the cancellation, and the aftermath. As I spoke, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. When I finished, Aunt Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Oh, Robin, I'm so sorry you've been treated this way. You did the right thing, standing up for yourself." I felt tears prick my eyes at her understanding. "Thanks, Aunt Sarah. That means a lot. But there's something odd about all this," she continued. "Mark's family is quite well off. They own a chain of sports nutrition stores and several rental properties in the city. They could easily afford this engagement party." An idea struck me. "Aunt Sarah, do you happen to have their address?" 20 minutes later, I was pulling up to a large house in an upscale neighborhood. My heart was pounding as I rang the doorbell. Mark's mother answered, her expression guarded. "Yes, can I help you?" "Mrs. Johnson? I'm Robin, Kate's sister. I need to talk to you and your husband about what happened today." She hesitated, then nodded, leading me to a spacious living room where Mr. Johnson was waiting. "Please," I said, "I know you probably heard terrible things about me, but I beg you to hear my side of the story." They exchanged a look, then Mr. Johnson gestured for me to continue. I took a deep breath and told them everything, showing them the emails, the invoice, and the threatening messages from Mark and Kate. As I spoke, their expressions changed from skepticism to shock, then to anger, not at me, but at Mark. "We had no idea," Mrs. Johnson said, her voice tight. "Mark told us you demanded an exorbitant fee at the last minute and then cancelled when they couldn't pay." Mr. Johnson's face was dark with fury. "We gave that boy $30,000 for this engagement party. He said it was all taken care of." Mrs. Johnson reached out and took my hand. "Robin, we are so sorry for what you've been through. This is unacceptable behavior." Mr. Johnson was already on his phone, tapping away. "I'm transferring you the full amount you spent, plus an additional $5,000 for your trouble. It's the least we can do." As we talked more, I found myself warming to Mark's parents. They were kind, understanding people who seemed genuinely horrified by their son's actions. When I left their house, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The money had been repaid, but more than that, I felt vindicated. Someone had finally listened to me and believed me. The weeks following the engagement party fiasco were surprisingly quiet. I threw myself into my work, grateful for the distraction. Slowly but surely, I felt like I was regaining my footing, both professionally and personally. One sunny afternoon, I was having coffee with my friend Lisa when she dropped a bombshell. "Did you hear about Kate and Mark?" she asked, her eyes wide with gossip. Mark's parents cut him off completely. No more allowance, and they're refusing to pay for the wedding. It's all over town. I sat back, stunned. Wow, I didn't expect that. That's not all, Lisa continued. Word is, the wedding's been called off. Kate and Mark can't afford it without his parents' money. As Lisa filled me in on more details, I felt a strange mix of emotions wash over me. There was a small, petty part of me that felt vindicated, karma had finally caught up with them. But mostly, I just felt sad. Sad for the mess this had all become, sad for the relationships that had been irreparably damaged. Over the next few days, I pieced together more of the story from various friends and acquaintances. Mark's parents, true to their word, had taken a hard line on their son's deception. They'd not only refused to fund the wedding but had also cut off his monthly allowance. As for my sister and parents, I heard through the grapevine that they were blaming me for everything. In their eyes, I was the villain who had ruined Kate's perfect life out of jealousy and spite. It hurt, but I wasn't surprised. It was easier for them to point fingers than to accept their own role in this mess. Weeks turned into months, and I had no direct contact with my family. At first, the silence was deafening. I'd catch myself reaching for the phone to call Mom or text Kate, only to remember that those bridges had been burned. But as time passed, I found the silence less oppressive and more peaceful. I focused on rebuilding my business, reaching out to clients I'd had to turn down during the engagement party planning. Many were understanding, and I threw myself into their events with renewed passion and creativity. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I reflected on everything that had happened. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest when I thought about my family. But alongside it was a new feeling, strength. I had stood up for myself, refused to be taken advantage of, and come out the other side. Yes, I'd lost my relationship with my sister and parents, at least for now. But I'd gained something invaluable, self-respect. I no longer felt like the family doormat, always giving and never receiving. I was Robin, successful event planner, woman who knew her worth. As for me, I was done being the family scapegoat. I was done apologizing for my success or diminishing myself to make others comfortable. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what it held. I raised my glass to the setting sun, a toast to new beginnings. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain: I was ready to face it head-on, on my own terms. My name's Jenny, and I've been a cardiologist for over 2 decades now. Life's thrown its fair share of curveballs at me, but I've managed to catch most of them. Well, except for that disaster of a marriage I got myself into. I met Tom when I was fresh out of med school. He was charming, funny, and seemed like the perfect guy to start a family with. My parents, though? They hated him from day one. "Jenny, you're making a mistake," my mom would say, shaking her head. "That man's trouble." But did I listen? I was young and in love, or so I thought. We got married, and for a while, things were good. We had 2 beautiful kids, and I thought we had it all figured out. Then the drinking started. At first, it was just a beer or 2 after work. Then it became a 6-pack. Before I knew it, Tom was stumbling home at 2 a.m., reeking of booze, and God knows what else. "Where the hell have you been?" I'd ask, trying to keep my voice down so I wouldn't wake the kids. "None of your damn business," he'd slur, pushing past me to collapse on the couch. I tried to make it work, I really did. For the kids, you know? But after years of broken promises and drunken rages, I'd had enough. I packed up the kids and left. My parents? They weren't exactly supportive. "You made your bed, Jenny," my dad said coldly when I called to tell them. "Now lie in it." That hurt. But what hurt more was watching them dote on my younger sister, Sarah. She was always their favorite, even when we were kids. 10 years younger than me, Sarah was the baby of the family, and boy, did they spoil her rotten. I remember when I got accepted into med school. I was over the moon, but when I asked my parents for help with tuition, they shut me down. "We're saving that money for Sarah's future," my mom said, not even looking me in the eye. "You'll figure something out, Jenny. You always do." And figure it out I did. My grandparents, bless their hearts, stepped up and helped me out. Without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. So there I was, divorced with 2 kids to support. But you know what? I made it work. I threw myself into my career, worked my ass off, and managed to provide a good life for my kids. Funny thing is, even when I was doing well, my parents still couldn't see past Sarah. She became a teacher, married some hotshot businessman, and suddenly she was the golden child all over again. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. I thought I'd seen it all, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened when my parents passed away. I was the one who organized the funeral. Sarah? She was living it up in Hawaii with her businessman husband. Typical. I spent days arranging everything, from the flowers to the catering, all while dealing with my own grief. The day after the funeral, I headed to the notary's office. I wasn't expecting much, given how my parents had always favored Sarah, but what I heard left me speechless. "I'm sorry, Dr. Kirby," the notary said, adjusting his glasses. "But your parents will leave everything to your sister Sarah. You're not mentioned at all." I left the office in a daze. Years of putting up with their criticism, of working my ass off to make them proud, and this was what I got. Nothing. When I finally got hold of Sarah on Skype, her smug face said it all. "Oh, Jenny," she cooed, not even trying to hide her glee. "I'm sure Mom and Dad had their reasons. You understand, don't you?" I wanted to scream, to reach through the screen and shake her. Instead, I just ended the call. After that, our conversations became few and far between. A Merry Christmas here, a Happy Birthday there. That was it. The only time I saw my nephews was through a screen, and even then, what I saw worried me. During one Skype call, I watched in disbelief as Alex demanded ice cream from Sarah. "Mommy, I want ice cream now," he yelled. "Sweetie, it's almost dinner time," Sarah replied weakly. "I don't care. I want it now." To my shock, Sarah got up and fetched him the ice cream. "There you go, darling. Anything for my little prince." I couldn't help myself. "Sarah, don't you think you should set some boundaries?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh, Jenny, not this again. I'm raising my children to be free spirits. I don't want them to have the kind of trauma we had growing up." And just like that, the call ended. Despite all this drama, I managed to carve out a pretty good life for myself. I had a nice apartment in a good neighborhood, my kids were grown and doing well on their own, and I had my faithful companion, Buddy, a little Yorkie who never failed to brighten my day. After a long day at the hospital, there was nothing better than coming home to Buddy's excited yips and wagging tail. We'd curl up on the couch, me with a glass of wine and him with his favorite chew toy, and I'd feel at peace. "It's just you and me against the world, eh, Buddy?" I'd say, scratching behind his ears. Life was good, quiet, but good. I had my work, my dog, my cozy home. I thought I had it all figured out. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when my life got turned upside down. I had just settled on the couch with Buddy, ready to unwind after a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital. Then came the knock. I opened the door to find Sarah, mascara streaked down her face, with Alex and Timmy in tow. "Jenny, thank God you're home," she blurted out, barging past me. "We need a place to stay." Before I could even process what was happening, the boys had already torn into my living room like a pair of tornadoes. "Whoa, hold on," I said, trying to corral them. "What's going on, Sarah?" She flopped dramatically onto my couch. "I had a fight with Robert. I'm teaching that bastard a lesson. Boys, say hi to your Aunt Jenny." But Alex and Timmy were too busy to acknowledge me. Alex had grabbed my remote and was changing channels at lightning speed, while Timmy had dumped the contents of his backpack all over my freshly vacuumed carpet. "Hey, guys," I tried, raising my voice slightly. "How about we calm down a bit?" Sarah's head snapped up. "Don't you dare yell at my children, Jenny." I blinked, stunned. "I wasn't yelling, I was just—" "Cool it, Aunt Jenny," Alex sneered, not taking his eyes off the TV. "Mom says we can do what we want." I looked at Sarah, expecting her to correct him. Instead, she just shrugged. "They're expressing themselves." Over the next few days, my peaceful apartment transformed into what I can only describe as a war zone. Toys littered every surface. My walls, once a soothing cream, now sported colorful artwork courtesy of Timmy's crayons. One evening, I came home to find my prized floor vase, a gift from a grateful patient, in pieces on the floor. "What happened here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Alex shrugged. "It was in our way." I looked at Sarah, who was, as usual, glued to her phone. "Sarah, don't you think the boys should apologize?" She barely glanced up. "Jenny, they're just being kids. Stop being so uptight." The final straw came when I heard a crash from the living room, followed by the unmistakable sound of shattering glass. I rushed in to find my TV face down on the floor, and a baseball-sized hole in my window. "That's it," I snapped. "Sarah, we need to talk. Now." I pulled her into the kitchen, away from the boys. "This can't go on. If you're staying here, there need to be rules. I can't have them destroying my home. They need discipline. If you won't provide it, I will." "Don't you dare," Sarah hissed. "You have no right to parent my children. I forbid you from raising your voice at them or making them do anything they don't want to do." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Sarah, they're out of control. They need guidance." "What they need," she cut me off, "is freedom to express themselves without judgment. I won't let you traumatize them like our parents did to us." As she stormed off, I looked around my once peaceful home. Broken items, scattered toys, crayon-covered walls. This wasn't expression. This was chaos. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I was rushing home from the hospital, praying that my apartment was still standing. As I fumbled for my keys, I felt a bony hand grab my arm. "Dr. Kirby," Jenny, Mrs. Johnson, my elderly neighbor, hissed. Her face was red with anger. "We need to talk now." Before I could protest, she was dragging me down the stairs and out the back door of our building. Strewn across the ground beneath my windows was a sea of garbage. Toys, food wrappers, even some of my medical journals. It looked like a landfill had exploded. "Your nephews," Mrs. Johnson spat, "have been throwing things at passers-by. For fun." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "And the noise," she continued, her voice rising. "All day long, it's screaming and shouting and God knows what else. I can't even hear my television." I stood there, mortified. Mrs. Johnson and I had always gotten along so well. She'd even watched Buddy for me when I had to work late. Now, she looked at me like I was public enemy number one. "If this doesn't stop," she said, jabbing a finger at my chest, "I'm calling the authorities." "I mean it, Jenny, this is unacceptable." As soon as Mrs. Johnson went back inside, I stormed up to my apartment. I burst through the door to find Alex and Timmy sprawled on the couch, playing video games. "Both of you, downstairs, now," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You're going to clean up every single thing you threw out that window. Right now." Alex barely looked up. "But we don't wanna." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. "Listen to me very carefully. If you don't clean up that mess right now, I'm calling the police and telling them exactly what you've been up to. Your choice." Their eyes went wide. For the first time since they'd arrived, they actually looked scared. Without another word, they scrambled off the couch and headed for the door. I supervised as they picked up every scrap of garbage. It took over an hour, but by the end, the area was spotless. As we headed back upstairs, I laid down the law. "If I ever catch you throwing anything out of a window again," I said, "you'll be in serious trouble. Understand?" They nodded silently, looking suitably chastened. I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd turned a corner. Then Sarah came home. "What's this I hear about you threatening my children?" she shrieked, slamming the door behind her. I tried to explain about Mrs. Johnson, about the garbage, about the risk of someone getting hurt. But Sarah wasn't having any of it. "You cruel, heartless scum," she spat. "You're just like Mom and Dad, always trying to control everyone. Well, I won't let you traumatize my children like they traumatized us." As she stormed off to comfort Alex and Timmy, who were now crying crocodile tears, I slumped against the wall. How had my quiet, orderly life turned into such a nightmare? That day started like any other in this new, chaotic reality I was living in. Another long shift at the hospital, another dreaded return to what used to be my sanctuary. But as I opened the door, I immediately sensed something was wrong. "Buddy?" I called out, expecting to hear the familiar click of his nails on the hardwood floor. Nothing. I searched every room, my heart racing. "Buddy, here, boy." Still nothing. Panic started to set in. I found Alex and Timmy in the living room, engrossed in their video games as usual. "Have you seen Buddy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Alex shrugged without looking up. "Oh yeah, that yappy thing was annoying us, so we opened the door and shooed it away." I don't remember exactly what I said next. I know I yelled. I know I cried. The next thing I knew, I was running down the street, calling Buddy's name until my throat was raw. "Buddy, please, boy, where are you?" Tears streamed down my face as I searched. All I could think about was Buddy, scared and alone, possibly hurt, or worse. The thought of him lying somewhere, hit by a car. I couldn't bear it. I was about to call the police when my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Hello?" I answered, my voice shaking. "Is this Dr. Jenny Kirby?" a kind voice asked. "We're calling from City Animal Shelter. We found a dog that we believe belongs to you. We were able to scan his microchip and get your information." I rushed to the shelter, tears of relief replacing my tears of fear. When I saw Buddy, safe and sound, I scooped him up and held him close, promising him I'd never let anything bad happen to him again. Back at the apartment, I was ready for a showdown. I found Sarah sprawled on the couch, engrossed in her phone as usual. "We need to talk," I said, my voice hard. "Do you have any idea what your boys did today?" "They kicked Buddy out onto the street." "He could have been killed, Sarah." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, relax. It's just a dog." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Sarah, Buddy is family. Your boys need to be punished for this. And for everything else they've done. This apartment is a disaster, things are broken, it's a mess." "Not my problem," Sarah cut me off, still tapping away at her phone. "It's your apartment, you clean it." I felt something snap inside me. "That's it, I've had enough. You need to get your act together, Sarah. Start parenting your children, or what?" she sneered, finally looking up at me. "You'll kick us out? Go ahead. I'm sure Child Services would love to hear about how you abused your poor, homeless sister and her children." I stood there, speechless. This wasn't my sister. This manipulative, uncaring woman couldn't be the same girl I grew up with. As I watched her turn back to her phone, dismissing me entirely, I realized something had to change. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital early, my mind racing. I hadn't slept well, plagued by thoughts of Buddy's close call and Sarah's indifference. Before my first patient arrived, I decided to make a call I probably should have made weeks ago. I dialed Robert's number, hoping he'd pick up. On the third ring, he answered. "Robert, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to understand what's going on. Sarah showed up at my door weeks ago, saying you two had a fight. When is she planning to come home? There was a long pause, then a heavy sigh. Jenny, I'm sorry, but Sarah's not coming home. I've filed for divorce. What followed was a litany of revelations that left me reeling. Robert's voice cracked as he poured out the whole sorry tale. She quit her teaching job years ago, Jenny. Said she was too stressed. But she doesn't do anything at home either. The house is a disaster, the kids run wild, and she's always on that damn phone. I closed my eyes, remembering the state of my own apartment. I've noticed, I said quietly. She told me it was my job to support her, Robert continued. Said I should hire a housekeeper, a nanny. That she deserved to enjoy life. And then she started taking these vacations. Alone. Using the money from your parents' will. I thought she just needed some time to herself, you know? But then I found out. Jenny, she was cheating on me. Multiple times, with different men. I felt like I'd been doused with ice water. Oh, Robert, I breathed. I'm so sorry. His voice broke. I did DNA tests on the boys. Thank God they're mine, but I just can't do it anymore, Jenny. I kicked her out. I feel terrible about the boys, but I just couldn't. As Robert's voice faded into quiet sobs, I sat there, stunned. Robert, I said finally, I'm so sorry you've been through all this. Thank you for telling me. After we hung up, I leaned back in my chair, the full weight of the situation hitting me. Sarah wasn't here for a short stay. She wasn't teaching her husband a lesson. She was here because she had nowhere else to go. The realization that this might be a long-term arrangement made my head spin. How was I supposed to handle this? My tiny apartment wasn't meant for 4 people. My orderly life wasn't equipped for the chaos Sarah and her boys brought with them. But as I thought about Alex and Timmy, I felt a pang of sympathy. They were just kids, acting out because they'd never been taught any better. And now their family was falling apart. That evening, I steeled myself for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. I found Sarah lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone as usual. Sarah, we need to talk, I said, my voice firm. I spoke with Robert today. He told me everything. About the divorce, about your affairs, about how you've been living. Sarah shrugged, turning back to her phone. So what? It's true. I'm divorcing that loser, I'm tired of him. I stared at her, dumbfounded. That's all you have to say? Sarah, you've turned your whole life upside down. What about the boys? They'll be fine, she said dismissively. That's what sisters are for, right? You have to help us. The casual way she said it, as if my support was a given, made my blood boil. I don't have to do anything, Sarah. You can't just expect me to pick up the pieces of your life. Oh, come on, she scoffed. It's not like you have anything better to do. No husband, no life outside work. Besides, Mom and Dad left me all that money. I can afford to take some time for myself. The mention of our parents will reopen old wounds. Speaking of that money, Sarah. Where is it? Because from what I can see, you're broke. She waved her hand dismissively. Oh, that? There were just crumbs left anyway. I felt my jaw drop. Crumbs? Sarah, they left you over $300,000. Yeah, and have you seen how expensive vacations are these days? She rolled her eyes as if I was the unreasonable one. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the rage building inside me. Listen to me very carefully, Sarah. This ends now. Either you start taking responsibility for your children and find a job, or you need to find somewhere else to live. You have 2 days to start making changes. I'd like to say that conversation was a turning point, that Sarah saw the error of her ways and decided to step up. But life isn't a fairy tale, and my sister, it seemed, was far past the point of redemption. 2 days later, I came home from a particularly grueling shift at the hospital. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Alex and Timmy were sitting on the couch, looking lost and upset. Boys? Where's your mom? I asked, a sense of dread creeping over me. Timmy wordlessly pointed to a note on the coffee table. With shaking hands, I picked it up and read. Jenny, I've decided to take your advice and live my life. I'm still young, and I deserve to be happy. I've met someone who appreciates me for who I am. Since you're so concerned about the boys, you can raise them. You're an old maid anyway, so it's not like you have anything better to do. Sarah. I collapsed onto the sofa, the note crumpling in my fist. The boys watched me warily, fear and confusion in their eyes. I looked at their faces, these two boys who had been nothing but trouble since they arrived, but who were now just scared, abandoned children. My anger at Sarah was overwhelmed by a wave of protectiveness for her sons. With a heavy heart, I picked up the phone and called Robert. Robert, it's Sarah. She's gone. She left the boys here and took off with some guy she met. There was a long pause, then a deep sigh. I'll be right over. Robert arrived within the hour, his face a mix of anger and concern. When he saw Alex and Timmy, his expression softened. He knelt down and opened his arms, and the boys ran to him, finally letting out the tears they'd been holding back. Over the next few weeks, Robert and I worked together to create a stable environment for the boys. He filed for full custody, and I stood as a witness, recounting Sarah's neglectful behavior and eventual abandonment. The judge's decision was swift. Sarah was stripped of her parental rights. Robert became the boys' sole legal guardian. As the dust settled, I found myself in a new role, the fun aunt who actually got to be fun. Robert and I stayed in close contact, and I visited the boys often. Sometimes, I'd take them for weekends at my place, which was now blissfully peaceful and tidy again. The change in Alex and Timmy was remarkable. With Robert's patient guidance and consistent discipline, they transformed from wild, uncontrollable terrors into respectful, well-behaved young men. It wasn't always easy, there were plenty of bumps along the road, but the progress was undeniable. Years passed. Alex, always the dramatic one, discovered a passion for acting. At 15, he landed his first commercial gig. Before long, he was appearing in TV shows, his talent evident to everyone who saw him. I couldn't have been prouder. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Jenny, it's Sarah. I nearly dropped the phone. Sarah, where are you? It's been years. I know. Look, I've been thinking. I want to come see Alex. You know, reconnect. I heard he's doing well in acting. That's great. I'm his mother. Surely I have some rights to what he's earning. And there it was. The real reason for her call. No, Sarah, I said firmly. You were legally stripped of your parental rights. You don't have any rights to Alex's earnings. That money is his, managed by Robert until he's of age. The line went quiet for a moment. Then, well, if that's how it is, I guess I don't need to see those kids after all. Goodbye, Jenny. I sat there for a long time, phone in hand, a mix of emotions swirling through me. Anger at Sarah's audacity. Sadness for the relationship my nephews would never have with their mother. But mostly, I felt relief. Relief that Alex and Timmy were safe, loved, and thriving despite everything. Life settled into a new normal. I threw myself into my work at the hospital, saving lives and making a difference. My own children, now adults themselves, visited often. And of course, there were regular movie nights with Alex and Timmy, who delighted in critiquing Alex's latest performances. Through it all, Buddy remained my constant companion. As I sit here now, scratching behind his ears and reflecting on the tumultuous journey that led us here, I can't help but smile. Life didn't turn out the way I expected, it rarely does. But sitting in my peaceful apartment, with the love of family, both blood and chosen, surrounding me, I realize I wouldn't have it any other way. My name is Sophia, and I'm the youngest of 3 daughters in what used to be a pretty average family. Growing up, our lives seemed normal enough. Dad worked all day while Mom stayed home, taking care of us and the house. I was always closer to Dad than Mom. He'd come home tired from work, but he'd still find time to ask about my day. Mom, on the other hand, always seemed distracted, lost in her own world of housework and gossip with the neighbors. "Sophia, did you finish your homework?" Mom would ask, not really listening for my answer as she stirred a pot on the stove. "Yeah, Mom. Can I go play outside now?" She'd wave me off, already turning back to whatever she was cooking. My sisters, Anna and Maria, were allowed more freedom. Being older had its perks, I guess. Everything changed when I turned 10. It started with a fever and a pain in my knee. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, my leg throbbing, while Mom bustled around making dinner. "Mom, my knee really hurts," I said, wincing as I tried to stretch my leg. She barely glanced at me. "You're fine, Sophia. Stop trying to get attention." But I wasn't fine. The fever lasted for days, and the pain in my knee got worse. Finally, after what felt like forever, Dad put his foot down. "We're taking her to the hospital," he said firmly, ignoring Mom's protests about the cost. The ride to the hospital is a blur in my memory. I remember the cool touch of the doctor's hands, the worried frown on his face as he examined me. And then, the words that changed everything. "I'm afraid your daughter has leukemia." The room spun. Mom gasped, Dad went pale, and I didn't really understand what it meant. Not then. But I knew it was bad from the way the adults were acting. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice small and scared. The doctor knelt beside me, his eyes kind but serious. "It means you're very sick, Sophia. But we're going to do everything we can to make you better." As we left the hospital that day, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a window. I looked small and pale, nothing like the happy, energetic girl I'd been just a week ago. I didn't know it then, but that girl was gone forever. The next few months were a blur of hospital visits, needles, and more pain than I thought possible. Chemotherapy, they called it. To me, it felt like poison running through my veins, making me sicker than the disease itself. I remember the day my hair started falling out. I was sitting on my bed, idly running my fingers through my long brown hair, when a clump came away in my hand. I stared at it, not quite believing what I was seeing. "Mom," I called out, my voice shaking. She came rushing in, took one look at the hair in my hand, and burst into tears. "Oh, Sophia," she sobbed, pulling me into a hug. It was one of the few times during my illness that she showed any real emotion towards me. As the days went by, I lost more than just my hair. My eyelashes fell out, then my eyebrows. Every time I looked in the mirror, a stranger stared back at me. I stopped going outside, too ashamed of my appearance. I was stuck at home, missing school, missing my friends, missing my life. One day, I overheard Mom talking on the phone. "It's so hard," she was saying. "Sophia's always been difficult, but this, I don't know how much more I can take." Her words stung more than any needle ever could. Was I really such a burden? The treatment seemed to be working, though. Slowly but surely, I started to feel better. The doctors were optimistic, talking about remission and recovery. For the first time in months, I dared to hope. Then, just as quickly as that hope had come, it was snatched away. The pain in my knee returned, worse than before. The fevers came back. And with them, the terrifying realization that the cancer was back too. "We need to do a bone marrow transplant," the doctor explained to my parents. I sat there, trying to understand what that meant. "It's her best chance." "Can we be donors?" Dad asked, his voice tight with worry. The doctor nodded. "We'll need to run some tests, but yes, parents are often the best match." I watched as both my parents were tested. Mom went first, then Dad. The wait for the results felt like an eternity. Finally, the doctor called us all into his office. His face was grave, and I felt my heart sink before he even spoke. "I'm afraid I have some unexpected news," he began. Mrs. Johnson, you're not a suitable donor for Sophia. Mom nodded, looking disappointed but not surprised. But then the doctor turned to my dad, and his next words turned my world upside down. Mr. Johnson, our tests show that you're not biologically related to Sophia. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at my parents, confused. Dad's face had gone white, while Mom looked like she was about to be sick. Dad suddenly exploded. It means your mother's been lying to us, he shouted, rounding on Mom. How could you? All these years. Mom burst into tears. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake, just once. As they argued, I sat there, feeling more alone than ever. Not only was I fighting for my life, but now I discovered that the man I'd called Dad my whole life wasn't really my father at all. As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt like I was drowning. My mom's affair, my dad not being my real father, and the looming threat of my leukemia relapse, it was all too much. Please, I begged, my voice barely above a whisper. Mom, where's my real father? He could be a donor, right? He could save me? Mom's tear-stained face contorted with anguish. Sophia, I can't. It would destroy everything. Everything's already destroyed. Dad, or should I say, the man I thought was my dad, shouted. He paced the small hospital room like a caged animal. Tell her who her real father is. But Mom just shook her head, lips pressed tightly together. I couldn't believe it. Here I was, literally fighting for my life, and she was more concerned about keeping her secret. The days that followed were a nightmare. My health deteriorated rapidly. I could feel myself getting weaker, could see the worry in the doctor's eyes as they checked my vitals. And still, Mom refused to budge. It was Grandma who finally broke through to Mom. She came to visit me in the hospital, took one look at my gaunt face, and marched straight to where Mom was sitting. Maria, she said, her voice steely. Enough is enough. That man you had an affair with, he's Sophia's only chance now. You need to contact him. Mom burst into fresh tears. But what about our family? What about? Family? Grandma cut her off. Look at your daughter, Maria. Really look at her. She is your family, and she's dying. Nothing else matters now. I held my breath, watching Mom's face. For a long moment, she was silent. Then, finally, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll do it. The next few hours were a blur. Mom made a phone call, speaking in hushed tones that I couldn't quite make out. Then we waited. The tension in the room was palpable. Dad, or rather, the man I'd always thought was my dad, sat in the corner, his face a mask of anger and hurt. And then, suddenly, he was there. My biological father. He burst into the room, out of breath like he'd been running. The doctors wasted no time. They whisked him away for tests, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the fractured remains of what I'd thought was my family. Hours later, the doctor returned, a smile on his face for the first time in days. Good news, he said. He's a perfect match. We can proceed with the transplant immediately. Relief washed over me, so strong I felt dizzy with it. I was going to live. I had a chance. The bone marrow transplant was a success. My body accepted the new cells, and I started recovering faster than anyone expected. It felt like a miracle, like I was being given a second chance at life. But I soon learned that sometimes, miracles come with a price. The day I was discharged from the hospital, my biological father came to see me. We sat in the hospital garden, away from the prying eyes of my mother and the man I'd always thought was my dad. Sophia, he said, his voice gentle. There's something you need to know. I've always wanted to be part of your life. I stared at him, confused. What do you mean? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I've been sending money to your mother for years, trying to support you. But she always told me you didn't want to see me. The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. All these years, I'd had a father who wanted me, and I never knew. But I didn't have time to process this information. As soon as I got home, everything fell apart. John, the man I'd called Dad my whole life, was waiting with packed bags. "I'm leaving," he announced coldly. "I've filed for divorce." Mom started crying, begging him to reconsider, but he was unmoved. "I've done DNA tests on Anna and Maria too," he said. "None of you are mine." It turned out John was infertile. He couldn't have children at all. John left that day, refusing to pay any more for us. Just like that, our family income was gone. Mom, who had never worked a day in her life, was suddenly faced with the reality of having to support 3 children on her own. "This is all your fault," Anna spat at me one day. "If you hadn't gotten sick, none of this would have happened." "Yeah," Maria chimed in. "Why couldn't you just die instead of ruining everything?" Their words cut deep, but not as deep as Mom's silence. She never defended me, never told them to stop. Instead, she threw herself into job hunting, coming home each day more frustrated and tired than before. When she finally found a job, things only got worse. She was exhausted all the time and used to the demands of working. And somehow, I became the target of all her frustrations. "Sophia," she'd say as soon as she walked in the door. "Why isn't dinner ready? Why isn't the house clean? Don't you know how hard I'm working to keep a roof over your head?" Suddenly, I found myself playing the role of housekeeper. I'd rush home from school to cook and clean, trying desperately to please Mom and my sisters. But nothing was ever good enough. Every day, Mom reminded me that it was my fault everything was revealed. "You need to atone for your guilt," she'd say. "If it wasn't for your illness, we'd still be a happy family." The weight of their accusations was crushing. I'd survived cancer, but for what? To live in this hell? My sisters hated me. My mother resented me. The house that was once my home had become a prison. As I scrubbed floors and cooked meals that would never be appreciated, I dreamed of the day I could graduate and leave this all behind. "You can forget about college," Mom told me one day. "We can't afford it, and it's not like you deserve it anyway." Her words were like a slap in the face. I'd always dreamed of going to college, of building a life for myself. Now, it seemed like even that was being taken away from me. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Mom came up with a new way to exploit the situation. One day, she cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes gleaming with a look I'd come to dread. "Sophia," she said, her voice sickly sweet, "I need you to go to your biological father and ask him for more money. We're struggling, Sophia. You owe us this much." I nodded silently and made the call. To my surprise, my biological father agreed without hesitation. He doubled the monthly payments, saying he wanted to make sure I was taken care of. If only he knew the truth. The next day, Mom quit her job. I thought maybe this meant things would get better, that she'd take over some of the housework. But no, all the chores still fell to me. The only difference was that now Mom had more time to criticize my efforts. For a while, things were, well, not good, but manageable. Then the money started running out again. And once again, Mom turned to me. "Sophia, we need more money. Go ask your father again." Feeling defeated, I made the call. My biological father, bless him, transferred $5,000 without question. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would make things better at home. How wrong I was. The day after the money arrived, Mom took Anna and Maria on a shopping spree. They came home laden with bags from expensive boutiques, laughing and chatting like I'd never seen before. I waited, hoping there might be something for me too. But there was nothing. Not a single item of clothing, not even a cheap t-shirt from a discount store. I was still wearing the same worn-out clothes I'd had before my illness, now hanging off my too-thin frame. It wasn't just clothes either. Mom started buying gourmet foods and expensive cuts of meat for herself and my sisters. For me? The cheapest, most basic ingredients she could find. Trying to cook decent meals with these subpar ingredients was a nightmare. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. As Mom critiqued yet another meal I'd slaved over, I snapped. Maybe if you bought some decent ingredients, I could cook better meals. I shouted, immediately regretting my outburst as I saw Mom's face darken. How dare you, she hissed. You're lucky I didn't let you die when I had the chance. Now shut up and eat what I give you. That night, as I lay in bed listening to the sounds of my sisters trying on their new clothes, I made a silent vow. Someday, somehow, I would escape this. Because if I didn't, I was afraid of what I might become in this house of hatred and lies. As my 14th birthday approached, I couldn't help but notice how different I looked from my friends at school. They had nice clothes, new shoes, while I was still wearing the same worn-out outfits I'd had before my illness. That's when I started my secret savings plan. My biological father had started giving me a small allowance, and instead of spending it, I carefully tucked each bill into my old teddy bear, Mr. Snuggles. It wasn't much, but I dreamed of buying myself something nice for my birthday. But even that small dream was shattered. One day, I came home to find Mom sitting on my bed, Mr. Snuggles torn open beside her, my precious savings in her hand. Mom, no, I cried out. That's my money. Her face twisted with anger. Your money? Nothing in this house is yours, Sophia. You're an ungrateful little creature, you know that? You sacrificed my marriage, your sister's happiness, all to save yourself. And now you're hiding money from us? Something inside me snapped. All the pain, all the resentment I'd been holding back for months, came pouring out. I didn't ask for any of this, I shouted. I didn't ask to get sick, I didn't ask you to lie about who my father was. I'm sorry your life isn't perfect, but it's not my fault. For a moment, Mom looked shocked. Then her face hardened. Get out of my sight, she hissed. The next morning, before anyone else was awake, I packed a small bag with what few belongings I had. I took one last look around the room that had been both my sanctuary and my prison, then slipped out the front door. I made my way across town to my biological father's house. When he opened the door and saw me standing there, tears streaming down my face, he didn't hesitate. Sophia, he said gently, what happened? Through my sobs, I managed to explain everything, the neglect, the verbal abuse, the stolen money. Please, I begged, can I stay with you? I can't go back there. His face softened with compassion. Of course you can, Sophia. You're always welcome here. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. My father hired a lawyer and filed for custody. Mom, predictably, threw a massive fit. She showed up at the courthouse, screaming about how she didn't want to work, how she needed the money my father had been sending. But in the end, it didn't matter. The judge took one look at me, still too thin, wearing clothes that were practically falling apart, and awarded full custody to my father. Living with my father was like stepping into a different world. He was kind, attentive, always asking about my day, and actually listening to my answers. We went for walks in the park, talked for hours about books and movies, even took a short trip to the beach. For the first time in years, I felt safe. Loved. Like I mattered. The years flew by, and before I knew it, I was graduating high school. My father, true to his word, supported me every step of the way. On graduation day, he surprised me with news that left me speechless. Sophia, he said, his eyes twinkling, I've got something for you. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a deed to an apartment, my very own place, and acceptance letters to colleges in another city. Dad, I gasped, I can't believe this. He pulled me into a hug. It's the least I can do, sweetheart. Consider it compensation for all those years we missed. As I prepared to leave for college, I decided to rent out the apartment. It would provide some extra income while I was away. I hired a reputable real estate agent to handle everything, feeling like a real adult for the first time in my life. College life was everything I'd dreamed of and more. I threw myself into my studies, made new friends, and started to heal from the traumas of my past. For once, life was good. Then, one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was my real estate agent, and he sounded worried. "Sophia, we have a problem," he said. "The tenants have been kicked out of your apartment by a woman claiming to be the owner. They described her, and, well, it sounds like it might be your mother." My blood ran cold. Mom. Of course, she would find a way to intrude on my life just when things were going well. When I arrived at my apartment, I took a deep breath before knocking. The door swung open, and there she was, Mom, looking older but with the same hard glint in her eyes I remembered so well. Well, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Look who's come home." I pushed past her into the apartment, my apartment. "What do you think you're doing?" I demanded. "You have no right to be here. This is my property." Mom's face twisted into a sneer. "I have every right. I'm your mother, aren't I? Everything you have should be mine." "Are you kidding me?" I felt my anger rising. "You spent years taking money from my biological father, money that was meant for me. You treated me like a servant, like a burden. You have no claim to anything of mine." "How dare you?" Mom's voice rose. "After everything I've done for you. I saved your life, ungrateful child. I could have let you die, but I found your real father, didn't I?" I laughed bitterly. "Found him? You hid him from me for years. You lied and cheated and made my life hell. And now you think you can just waltz in and take my apartment?" For a moment, Mom looked taken aback by my outburst. Then, her face crumpled, and she began to cry. As I watched my mother cry, her makeup smearing across her face, I felt a twinge of pity. But I'd learned the hard way not to let my guard down around her. "Sophia," she sniffled, her voice taking on a pleading tone, "you don't understand. I have nowhere to go. I've been kicked out of my apartment because I couldn't pay the rent. Your sisters, they've moved out and won't let me stay with them. Your father stopped sending money. I have nothing, Sophia. Nothing." I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the flood of emotions her words triggered. "Mom," I said firmly, "I'm sorry you're in this situation, but it's not my responsibility to fix it. You're an adult. You need to get a job and support yourself." Her tears dried up instantly, replaced by a look of indignation. "A job? At my age? After everything I've been through? No, Sophia, I'm not leaving. This is my apartment now, and you can't make me go." I felt a surge of anger at her entitlement. Without hesitation, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "We'll see about that," I said. When the police arrived, I explained the situation calmly, showing them the deed to the apartment. The officer listened patiently, then turned to my mother. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "you're trespassing. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." Mom's face contorted with rage. "You can't do this to me. I'm her mother." But her protests fell on deaf ears. The officer escorted her out, giving her a stern warning about the consequences of returning without permission. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. As soon as the police left, Mom started screaming outside my window, hurling insults and accusations. "Look at her," she yelled to anyone who would listen. "My own daughter, throwing her mother out on the street. After everything I've done for her, she abandons me." I closed the curtains, trying to block out her voice, but I could still hear her tirade. To my relief, none of the neighbors seemed to be paying her any attention. Eventually, realizing she wasn't getting the reaction she wanted, she left. Later that evening, my phone rang. It was Dad. "Sophia," he said, his voice tinged with concern, "are you okay?" "Your mother, she came to see me." I felt my stomach drop. What did she want? Dad sighed. "She tried to reconcile, if you can believe it. Said we should get back together, be a family again." I told her no, of course. "I just wanted to make sure you were all right." I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. "I'm fine, Dad. Thank you for everything." The next day, I returned to college, throwing myself back into my studies with renewed determination. The incident with Mom had shaken me, but it also reinforced my resolve to build a life for myself, on my own terms. 4 years flew by in a blur of classes, exams, and new experiences. Before I knew it, I was graduating college, diploma in hand, and the world at my feet. I made the decision to return to my hometown, to the apartment that had caused so much drama. It felt right, somehow, to come full circle. As I unpacked my boxes and settled into my new life, I felt a sense of peace I'd never experienced before. I had a good job lined up, a place of my own, and a future full of possibilities. I made a conscious decision to cut ties with my mother and sisters. The toxicity of those relationships had no place in my new life. Instead, I focused on nurturing my relationship with my biological father, the one person who had consistently supported and loved me. As I stood on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sunset over the city I once couldn't wait to leave, I realized something profound. The hardships I'd faced, the illness, the family drama, the betrayals, they hadn't broken me. They had made me stronger, more resilient.